podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to How We're the Podcast as we gather just minutes after an absolute epic at the Stadium of Light. We were just talking before we started recording. We don't really know where to start with this one. I'm actually watching Frank Lampard with the sound off right in front of me as we speak about it. An incredible night at the Stadium of Light. I'm even forgetting what the score is. I think it was 1-1 eventually in the second leg against Coventry, which meant we ended up going through, what was it? 3-2 it was, and I just lost count. I just know that we're through. I'm just glad I've got someone left to go through it with me, because it felt like, either everyone was there or Martin was going to join us, but now he's had to take his kids on the school run in Australia because it's so late with extra time. So I'm glad to have Bomber for company tonight.
I'm barely clinging on, mate. I'm barely clinging on. Mentally, I'm spent, but I'm here for you.
I'm absolutely exhausted. I mean, yeah. Was it ever in doubt?
No, of course not, mate. Of course not. Once we came away from the CBS Arena with a 2-1 win, it was never in doubt at all. Jesus.
I don't know, but I was, because of the way the game went with that corner and everything, I'm not even sure I registered we had a corner. That I was so set in we're going to have penalties that I just didn't even register that there was a possibility to still get one.
Yeah, I was pretty much the same, because it was going to be the last kick of the game, and in my mind, from the point when Leo Chielda come on, obviously I assume he came on to take a penalty, but from that point I was like, oh well, that's penalties then. So it didn't even occur to me that we could score from this corner. In actual fact, it was probably relief that the ball was down that end, and therefore in the last couple of seconds we weren't going to concede, an agonising last-minute goal to be knocked out. So and it all just happened so quickly, because the corner came in, and then it's not a clean header. It's hit the bar. It's bounced on the line. Has it gone in? Hasn't it gone in? Dan Ballard's taken 5 minutes to get his shirt off. I don't know what's going on. I've put a hole or a dent in my wall in the room that I'm watching it in, because I threw my footstool across the room. So the missus is going to come down in the morning to that, and I'll have to explain myself, and she won't get it, but everyone else listening tonight will understand, I'm sure.
There's going to be so many stories like that. I had a mate in Australia who was taking his kids to school, and the score changed in the car as he was driving along, and he nearly crashed the car. One of the bands here had the cat on their lap when that second goal went in, and the cat scratched everything.
Cat's not been seen since.
No, the cat's hiding somewhere, because I just went absolutely ballistic at it. But it's just one of those games that I'm just absolutely exhausted after. I mean, putting through the ringer. I mean, we'll go into it. That I'm not quite sure our tactics helped my heart rate at all. But we'll kind of get into it, because, look, let's face it, we've kind of gone through, and look, we don't care with any of this. But I mean, if we're completely honest, you've got to say that probably over the course of 120 minutes, Coventry were probably the better side.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Coventry will feel hard done by, and I think probably rightly so. But like you mentioned, Chris, I couldn't care less. But then I guess if our response to everything was I don't care, it wouldn't be much of a reaction podcast, would it? So we've probably got to have some opinion on it. But yeah, Coventry, they were really bad to start off with. But then as they grew into the game, and particularly that second half, I thought the outcome was inevitable. And once they got the first, I thought they might get a second. And yeah, just the way that we were trying to hold on, the way in which we played, very much in line with the first game, really, where we obviously got gifted that Mayenda goal at the end. But yeah, to your point, Coventry fans will be watching that, and they'll be taking themselves off to cry themselves to sleep, feeling hard done by. But who cares?
Yeah. Well, I've just getting a message from my brother, who's actually a professor of physics and astronomy. And he's claiming that Ballard's header didn't obey the laws of physics.
His neck didn't, certainly.
Well, I mean, for someone for someone that size, how he managed to do some sort of, gymnastic style kind of folding himself up. He was almost like Dan Ballard origami. He kind of folded himself up.
I called it the flamingo.
Oh, the flamingo, was it?
Yeah.
It was,
or the ostrich.
and then try to header it off the back of his neck just
Yeah.
to be stylish. But look, we went through. But look, it's Sunderland, isn't it? This is the way. I mean, when we were going through the analysis before the game, we were trying to go through scenarios and all this sort of stuff and how it would go, and we're talking about potential decisions and all this sort of stuff. Why is it that Sunderland never do it the easy way? We always manage to find a difficult way, a difficult route that it just ruins our hearts, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But then I think that also plays into why we love the club so much, because there is never a dull moment. You don't have the Man City seasons where everything's going breezy and you win in every game and you walk into every game expecting to win 2 or 3-0. And I'll be honest, Chris, I wouldn't have it any other way, mate. It's why I love, one of the reasons why I love the club, for better or worse. Moments like this haven't been around too often, but moments like this make everything else that's come before it worthwhile. And regardless of what happens at Wembley, that moment will stick with me and probably with a lot of people for a long, long time.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into it, but it's actually, because we've got a good week to talk about it, but I know we'll end up kind of moving on, but with that goal, that moment, that celebration, it's about making it mean something now, isn't it? Other than just that celebration on that night, because in 10 years' time, if we lose that, yes, okay, people will kind of look back to it, but it won't mean half as much if we don't follow through on it.
No, you are right. You are right. Like in this very moment, like what are we, 20 minutes after the final whistle? My opinion is, we'll have this forever, like I just said. But you're right. If come the end of May, we're not a Premier League team, it will have kind of felt like it was for nothing. I mean, it will still feel nice, regardless, to have got one over on Coventry and to have done it in the manner in which we did it. And I don't know whether Netflix cameras are still here or not. I'm not sure that they are, but they've missed out on an absolute fairy tale there, haven't they? I mean, you literally couldn't script it. The man who's been lauded as a colossus over these 2 games for 180, well, more than that, 210 minutes, 40 clearances over the 2 games, 60 odd headers, and that final header in the last kick of the game is the one to send us through to the final. The Netflix will be kicking themselves if they weren't there.
I mean, unbelievable. It was interesting listening to him at the end there, because he was talking about being nervous before the first leg, because he hadn't played for so long. And he comes along, puts 2 performances in like that, and gets the winning goal in the 93rd minute.
He could have fooled me if he was feeling nervous. I mean, it was just to me, just exuded confidence, and we forget that actually he's still a quite young and quite inexperienced defender. So to put in the 2 performances back to back like he has, he deserves a Wembley final. And if we'd have gone out tonight, I'd have been on the phone to Frank Lampard to see if they could take him on loan just for a game, because that boy deserves a Wembley final regardless.
Yeah, he did. Well, look, let's try and get into the game a little bit, because there was a game before that moment, I think. I was just kind of lost in it, because it was just the nerves, the tension. I mean, let's start, because, obviously we weren't there. We're talking straight after the game, but in terms of having that atmosphere come through to us as being kind of exiles and seeing it, and I've seen all the footage from before the game when the coach kind of came through. I mean, did you think actually that added to the tension with being ahead, or at times when we're defending, especially kind of those late stages at normal time, that actually the atmosphere was a benefit for the players?
I'm kind of on the fence with it a little bit, because whilst don't get me wrong, the atmosphere was absolutely incredible, and that came through on the TV. And it's not always, that doesn't always happen, and particularly in Sunderland games were on the telly. That atmosphere doesn't come through, and I think fans, season ticket holders, by and large, will unanimously agree that actually the atmosphere generally throughout the season at the stadium, like, hasn't been great. But I wish I was there. Like I was so close to seeing if I could get a spare ticket and go in, and I didn't. And I kind of wish that it's easy with hindsight because we've won and everything else that's gone with it. But I do think it kind of, it spurred us along. But I do also think that it had a bit of a negative effect. Once Coventry scored, it went very, very quiet and very nervy, and you could only hear the Coventry fans. And I think as much as the shouting and the screaming and the singing would have helped us, that silence would have had the complete opposite effect, and all it did was build into this vicious circle of nerve jangles and nail biting and anxiety. And I'm sure the players at some point would have picked up on that as well.
Yeah. Well, it ends up being that kind of two-way thing, doesn't it? Where kind of the players feed off the fans, but then the fans need to feed off the players. And when it went flat, it was obviously when Coventry were on the ascendancy, and then it changed like that. But look, first 10, 15 minutes, I thought, right, comfortable. We seemed on the front foot. We seemed to be pressing quite high up, forcing Coventry to play longer balls. And then suddenly, it just, on about 15, 20 minutes, it just seemed to flip a little bit. And I was starting to write things down, like, a little frustrated, little notes saying, we're not keeping the ball well enough. We're not keeping possession. We were too deep, maybe, but we were very organised and compact out of possession. But we had, every time Coventry got the ball, it was right in position, 11 players behind the ball. Now, that was fantastic away from home, and it worked for a certain period, at the Stadium of Light. But you could almost feel the tension build as Sunderland fans, after that first 15 minutes, when we thought, it's gonna be this kind of even game to and fro. When we realised that we were then sitting in, you could almost feel the nerves building.
Yeah. I actually think we were better for a slightly longer period. I think probably about 28 minutes was when Coventry started to really get a bit of a foothold in the game. But you're right, that for that first 25, 28 minutes, let's call it, I thought Coventry were really poor. I thought we were really good, and Coventry weren't playing like a team that were a goal down and needed to win a game. And it looked like they didn't really have any ideas. They were, like you said, we were reducing them to kind of long balls, which were just being gobbled up all day by Luke and I, by Dan Ballard. Some of them were running through for goal kicks, etc. And I actually felt really quite comfortable at that point. And I was kind of like, yeah, if this is all they've got, we'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, when I look at actually the chances that I noted down, in that first half hour, the best chance was really Mayenda, I suppose, when he picked the ball up kind of midway inside the Coventry half. Then he did what he does. He just turned out of nowhere. I mean, he's got this knack of just taking the ball down with one touch, and then before you know it, you think he's holding the ball up. But then he's already turned the defender and he's in behind. And then he just charged at them, scaring the life out of the Coventry defence, took 3 on, and then forced a really good save by Wilson, actually. I think it was down to his right with his feet. But that was going right in the bottom corner. And to be fair, that was the best chance of the first half hour.
Yeah, it was. And I don't know how he does it. Maya's got that knack of doing that. But, that's the sort of things, and I'm not comparing one to the other and saying that but that was the sort of things that you were seeing Didier Drogba do kind of 15 years ago, or however long it was, back to a defender, somehow manage a little Cruyff turn or a little turn and roll him. And actually, Mayenda's got this knack of doing it quite easily. It doesn't seem to be too troublesome for him to be able to do that. And then he's got that acceleration to get away from the defender afterwards. The only thing with him is he's still got that rawness in the final third and in his final decision making. There was a couple of times where he probably should have played in Lefay or should have played in Isidore, and instead he was a bit kind of head down and very direct. But that first, like I say, 20, let's call it 25 minutes, the first 25 minutes, his chance was definitely the best. And he was all over the place, like out of possession and in possession. His work was phenomenal. Just a little bit lacking on the decision making, I thought.
Yeah. Well, I think you're probably right about the timings, because I noted down at about 35 minutes that they did one for the 10 minutes prior to that, and 58% of the game was in our defensive third of the pitch. I mean, Coventry really started to pile the pressure on, and the crosses came in. There was one on half hour where Patterson got absolutely nowhere near it. So not quite as bad as the one at their place early doors, but there was a goal-mouth scramble. We managed to clear it. Then on 35 minutes, Bellingham gave the ball away. Then again, it went wide. Rodoni at the back post. That was just over the bar. I mean, I actually thought that was a closer chance than it looked.
Yeah.
First off, and then there was another one, Sakamoto over the bar from 6 yards. But again, and I brought this up after the first leg, that when you invite that many crosses into the box, it feels like you're taking a risk. And I don't think in either game we did well enough to stop the cross coming into the box.
No, we did it in parts. Coventry were at their best and looked most threatening and had me most nervous when they managed to get Sakamoto, in particular, one-on-one with Dennis Sirkin. Now, when we looked comfortable, Lefay and Sirkin were doubling up on him, and he couldn't turn inside, he couldn't turn outside, because either way that he went, he was into trouble. So what he was doing is he was playing it inside to Rodoni, and that's kind of core block that we had of Neil, Jobe, O'Nien and Ballard were really quite solid, and nothing really came through that way. But yeah, Mason Clark on the other side, when he got one-on-one with Trey Hume, he forced Trey Hume into sometimes some quite silly fouls actually from Trey, particularly the shoves in the back. But that's because one-on-one, our fullbacks couldn't handle their wide players, and you could tell that if Coventry were going to create anything, that's where it was going to come from. And lo and behold, that's where the majority of those chances did come from.
Yeah, I was going to mention that actually, because it wasn't. I mean, Trey Hume had a couple of really bad ones. But when I say bad ones, I say really silly ones.
Yeah.
Sirkin had a couple. Dan Neil had a couple. It just seemed like in really dangerous areas, we kept giving Coventry the chance to put the ball on the deck and just get the ball in the box. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and knowing what we knew from the first game, and knowing what we've known about Coventry all season, they're the highest scorers from crosses in the league. They're the highest scorers of headers in the league. And there was nothing more frustrating than seeing the ones that keep sticking into my mind, and I'm probably picking on them a little bit, is those Trey Humes shoves in the back, right on the corner of the 18-yard box. There was at least twice that it happened when it didn't need to. And it was just fortunate that actually they were better at crossing the ball from open play than they were at delivering it from dead ball situations, i.e. corners or free kicks, because, they were very, very hit and miss, particularly from the corners. But yeah, I mean, as a fan, you sit there watching it saying, don't foul, don't give them opportunities to cross the box. And then we do something as silly and petulant as that 4 or 5 times during a half. And you just think that it's, the moment's coming when we're going to concede from it. And you could see it coming a mile off.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I think we were all relieved to get into the break actually goalless. I mean, I know I was.
Yeah, definitely.
But as you said, the last 15 minutes of the first half, we struggled, and then we came out in the second half, and you're almost thinking, right, brilliant. We get in at halftime, we regroup, let's come out, let's, get out a little bit more, let's keep the ball a little bit more. But bizarrely, the second half it was just a continuation of the first half.
Yeah, it was more of the same, and I was the same as you. When that halftime whistle went, I went, okay, right. Now we regroup a little bit and hopefully start the second half in the way in which we started the first half, or certainly at the very least somewhere in between, because somewhere in between would have still been relatively comfortable. But actually what happened is Sakamoto got more of the ball. He got one-on-one with Sirkin more than he did probably towards the end of the first half. And yeah, I was expecting that to happen again in the second half, but probably not until maybe 70 minutes when Coventry might start getting a little bit more desperate. But yeah, to have it happen straight from the off in the second half, that did really concern me. And I was thinking at that point, when we can't hold out like this for the whole second half, something's either got to change or we're going to concede.
Yeah, 100%. I was exactly the same, and I actually thought we came out in that second half looking nervous. And if you looked at Job and Dan Neil in the midfield, who have both been two of the division's best midfielders this season, especially at keeping possession and being in possession of the ball. And I just thought it seemed like every other pass was going astray. Every other pass we were losing possession. We weren't keeping hold of the ball. We couldn't get out at times. Now, at this point, I want to ask you about whether you think it was the setup or the situation that meant we ended up getting deeper and deeper, getting 11 men behind the ball, not being able to keep hold of the football, not getting that a foot on it when we needed it. Was that our setup, or do you think that was just what happened in that situation that we ended up doing that?
I think that's more. I think that's more situational than anything, because we didn't in the middle in particular. We didn't look overrun. We were just really quite wasteful. And on the ball, I thought, by and large, bar that first 20 minutes and bar the second half of extra time, I thought Neil and Job on the ball, and I'll caveat this in a second, on the ball were really quite poor. My personal opinion was. I caveat that with that they were both absolutely immense off of the ball. Their work rate and their closing down and their shape and everything else was seasoned professionals level kind of football. But on the ball, I did feel that they gave it away probably a little bit too cheaply, or didn't get us forward quickly enough in the way in which was effective for us in the first game. And again, that was something that I could see coming, and it just made me more and more nervous, because in my head I was like, right, okay, we've sat deep in the first leg, but when we wanted to break, we were able to break. And if you think back to Isidore's goal, that's Dan Neil picking the ball up, driving forward with it, playing it to Lefay, and Lefay does the bit of magic that he does in playing the pass through, and that wasn't coming off for either of them tonight. Bar that first 20 minutes and the last 15 or second half of extra time. Off the ball amazing, but on the ball really, really quite poor.
Yeah, but mind, I'd put Lefay and Roberts in that bracket as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I don't think Isidore was good enough at holding the ball up and giving us an outlet in terms of getting out and getting up the pitch a little bit. Moving forward, just after the hour mark, we had a bit of a training ground routine from a well-worked corner. It was Roberts who took the corner, knocked it to Lefay, then it went out to O'Nien. It just seemed to keep going further away from goal. And then Luke O'Nien crossed it to the back post. And we always seem to look like all these new routines always seem to end with Trey Hume.
Yeah.
He volleyed it at the back post.
Yeah, I think in training, he must be absolutely belting volleys in top bins, left, right and centre. Because you're right, every single set piece, free kick routine, corner routine, no matter what happens with it, it's Trey Hume sneaking into the back post with it to try and side foot a volley across goal and in. Yeah, it was really well worked, and Hume has scored a couple of those. On his goal highlight reel, he has got a couple of those kind of side volleys where he's come in late from the back post, and obviously we're looking to capitalise on that. He just mistimed it. I think it came off his shin more than anything, didn't it? But yeah, what a goal that would have been, but not to be.
Yeah, well, that they did kind of mask the couple of chances in that period. It did kind of mask a good 10 minutes of Coventry pressure, real pressure, where they just pinned us in and down our left-hand side again and again and again. Sakamoto either kept using somebody who was on the overlap, or he kept coming inside on his left foot and crossing the ball again. And we were clearing it, and I said this in the first leg, that like Dan Ballard again, absolutely brilliant. But the worry is, because he's brilliant, because we're relying on him so much, because we're allowing the ball to come in the box. And the goal on 75 minutes was, you could almost see it coming. You were going, oh, they're going down that side again. They've got the ball in the box, right? We've got to clear, right? Then they go again. And they didn't even bother coming out to their left-hand side and on our right. At all. There was times where there was opportunities to switch it, and they went to Sakamoto again and again. And then on this occasion, Serkin got pulled out, and then Bellingham tried to cover. Lefay, I don't think, did well tracking back, and they got kind of an overload on that side. Then there was a ball to the back post. Hume seemed to be on his heels, but it was all about, for me, it was all about us not keeping the ball and just inviting them on too much.
Yeah, that's what it was essentially, because all we were doing was clearing, not even to the halfway line. We were clearing basically to the edge of our defensive third, and they were just recycling it. So that, but they're already set up in those attacking positions, so they could just keep feeding the ball in. And I think they picked up on it on commentary as well. Is that Coventry they just kept playing it down that right hand side every time they retained the possession. They kept playing it down that right, and I can't remember who it was, but one of the guys on co-coms were like, then there's all this space on the left. Why are they not switching it out? They just keep going down the right. And actually, I think what they did is they got a bit wise to us doubling up on Sakamoto. So they overloaded even further. And the amount of times in that right hand side, they had 4 players all making runs off of the ball. So it didn't really matter that we doubled up on Sakamoto, because you'd have Van Owick overlapping, or one of the centre midfielders would come in overlap. They were doing whatever they could to put themselves into a position to get that cross in. Obviously, to have Mason Clark or Haji Wright get on the end of it, and that's what happened in the end. And it was a bit of a shame for Lefebvre, because over the 2 legs defensively, he's been, for an attacking player who has got no kind of credentials as a defender, he was superb defensively. But it's just unfortunate that both Coventry goals have been when he's just overcommitted or a little bit too much, and let the player get past him and get a crossing, and they've scored from it. So I'd felt a little bit for him for that.
Yeah. And then once they went ahead in the tie, or in terms of the second leg, and then back on level terms on aggregate, unfortunately, that last 15 minutes or so was just all Coventry. And at this point, it was funny. It was interesting because actually I thought at this point, after 75 minutes, because they'd pinned us in so much, I actually thought when they scored, because I was trying to kind of get myself around the psychological blow of conceding a goal. But I was thinking this might not necessarily be the worst thing in the world, because it might give us that kick up the backside to turn this around and actually get that goal to win the tie.
See, I got the exact opposite. My head was in my hands. I was like, oh, well, that's it. The Coventry aren't not going to score another. I felt at that time, I felt we were holding on for dear life by our fingernails for a 0-0. And then when the first goal went in, I was kind of like hands in the air going, oh, well, that's it, because they're obviously going to score a second now. So it's interesting that we had 2 completely contrasted opinions on that.
Well, it didn't last very long, because I realised soon after the goal, basically, there was if anyone else was going to score a goal in normal time, it was going to be Coventry. And then, but their best, I mean, they were completely in control of the later stages of normal time, and at 92nd, it went to the 92nd minute for them to get that chance again, across from the left again, because they kept doing it even after they scored. We couldn't kind of manage to get it right on that side, and they got a ball in, and then Haji Wright 6 yards out, and actually I will again Ballard. I mean, the goal and everything like this. But I think this was this in some ways is just as important, because I think he put Wright off right at the last minute, just before he made contact.
Yeah, he just kind of did enough, didn't he? And you could tell, because the way Haji Wright ended up on the deck after the chance, you could tell that he was kind of just slightly off balance, just a little, just the slightest of nudges from Dan Ballard, just so that he couldn't get his head or anything onto the ball as he needed to get it on target. And I think that chance pretty much sums up Haji Wright's 2-leg playoff semi-finals, doesn't it? Because whenever I said when I did the reaction pod on Friday that I got a Coventry mate who was messaging me throughout the game, and after that went in, he was like, "Oh, I've had it with Haji Wright. Get him off. He's useless." And he certainly wasn't the same man that scored a hat-trick past us in the league game, anyway.
Yeah, well, I think he used all his luck up in that game back in March, I think it was. But yeah, then it went in extra time, and again, just like half time, I did the right, brilliant. Let's regroup again, and let's change it for extra time, because it's now a different game. We're not holding on to anything. We now need to go and score a goal. So let's make it a different game in extra time. And that first period in extra time was exactly the same again. We ended up getting pinned in early on. We sat deep. We couldn't really keep hold of the football. We looked tired. And I think it was interesting, because for the last 3 or 4 minutes, I think, for that first period of extra time, sorry, we ended up getting out and we ended up actually playing a little bit of football. And it gave us that little bit of hope, those last few minutes of that first period, where I thought, actually, it looks like we're getting out now. And I don't know whether it was a case of fatigue with Coventry, or we just kind of we managed to get out once and then kind of got out of our half. But it just gave us that little bit of hope at the end of that first period of extra time. Yeah.
I'm not so sure that what they were. I'm not so sure that they were fatigued, because they didn't really, they were able to play as freely as they wanted to, really, and dictate the pace. So I'm not sure if it was fatigue. I got the feeling that they kind of resigned themselves to not getting that second goal, and almost started gearing up for a potential penalty shootout. But because we didn't do anything too differently, they just gave us a little bit more space on the ball, and I think they were almost going into a mode of, okay, well, we'll keep what we've got now. We clearly aren't going to break them down. The one player for them, Mason Clark, did look like he was tired, and from about 60 minutes, I think the commentators were mentioning, he's how much longer has he got left? He's coming back from injury, etc. But yeah, it was definitely better, and I went into half time of extra time thinking, oh, actually, we might have a chance here.
Well, you see, you thought the opposite to me earlier on, and I was thinking the opposite to you at this point, because I was just thinking about holding on for penalties at this point. But the second period of extra time, because Mundle had come on early in extra time, and he seemed to kick in a little bit at the beginning of the second period. I think he'd had 15 minutes to kind of bed into the game and kind of find himself, because he did look pretty sharp, actually, which was good to see. But then a couple of minutes into the second period, it was Rigg cut back to the back post. I think he cut it back. He went down the right hand side. Mundle was at the back post, and it kind of beat the keeper, but the defender on the line stuck a leg out, and I thought that was it. I thought that was our chance.
Yeah. I thought that the way that second half of extra time played out, I had got the feeling, because we were getting a little bit more into the game, and we were probably the team more likely to go on and win the game, or to go on and get another goal at least. I thought that was the chance, and when that didn't go in, at that point I was kind of like, okay, well, it's going to be penalties then. And I was kind of hiding behind my hands, because obviously our penalty record is abysmal this season. The only thing I was thankful for was that Isidore was off the pitch, so the opportunity for him to take one wouldn't have been there. But yeah, at that point, once Mundle had missed that chance, you're going to get one chance, similar to Coventry. They had that one Hadji chance at the end. You knew we were going to get one chance, and it was whether or not we put it away, and we didn't. And I was kind of like, right, okay, penalties it is then.
Yeah. I mean, just at this point, because obviously it was better in that second period of extra time, but it was interesting listening to the manager and Dan Neil after the game. Both of them said that they thought that we could have played more football and we could have played better football, and there was frustrations on the bench that the players weren't doing that. And it seems odd, because at times it looked like a tactic that we got in deep, got in 11 players behind the ball. But from what the manager and Dan Neil said, it didn't seem to be the tactics at all.
Yeah, I think that's circumstance. Coventry, to their credit, probably forced us to play that way. Plus the fact, as I said, when we tried to play football going forward, it just wasn't coming off. We were making the wrong decisions, etc. So there's probably a little bit of a reluctance to continue to try and do those things, given the pressure of the situation of being one down and not, for whatever, for by any means necessary, not conceding a second goal. So that I think the circumstances probably dictated that, as did Coventry's play. Because I think the game plan would have been to play how we did in the first 20 minutes for the duration of the game. And it was Coventry that imposed their game plan on us, which made us sit deeper and deeper and deeper. I don't think we were meant to have sat that deep for quite so long, trying to hold on to a 0-0.
Yeah. And then, as you said, this is when the game changed. pretty much the last minute of extra time when Gelder came on for Circa, and that's when everything changed. But then 32nd, 33rd minute or whatever it was, we got that corner, and I think with this header, I think because it's about as simple as a corner routine as you can potentially get. You throw it into the 6-yard box, and you've got the big fella standing there who's just going to head it in. It's funny because Ballard actually said in his interview after the game, he said it was basically the nerves of the corner coming in was the reason he jumped up so early. But I think it's going to be one of these that's going to grow legs over years. Like in 20 years' time, people will be going to say he did a triple somersault, double pike before he got to the ball. But it doesn't matter how he got there. But it was just the fact how he got there and the kind of space he had, and everyone kind of took this this collective breath, inhaled. And then the fact it went in off the bar and everything, it was just one of those. It was just one of those moments. I mean, where is this going to rank in moments at the stadium? Like,
I think as an individual moment, it's up there. Off the top of my head, I can't think of many that beat it. But my memory is nowhere near as good as yours, Chris. So you've probably got a couple in mind. But
I was thinking, when they do these reels of kind of goals or something at the stadium, like you always see the Barini against the Mag, Kevin Phillips against Chelsea, the volley, the Defoe volley, of course, yeah. I mean, are we putting it up there?
It's up there. It's up there. But like you said, it's all contextual, isn't it? Because if we end up returning to the Premier League, regardless, what happens on Wembley will happen, but we wouldn't have had the opportunity if it wasn't for that goal. And given that we were up against it for the vast majority of the game, that it was the 123rd minute of the game. And it's funny, like you mentioned, modern football now, you've got set piece coaches and set piece routines and people with full-time jobs whose full-time job it is to tell a player to stick their hand in the air and pass it to someone else to end up in this position. And it was just a good old-fashioned cross to the near post to the big man that has ended up getting the job done. So maybe set pieces aren't so scientific after all.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a game that I think kind of sums up the playoffs in some way, because look, I think if we all kind of were completely honest about it, I don't think it was a particularly great performance. But in a one-off game like that, it's a cup tie, you basically play to win the game, and you win it however you can possibly do that. It makes no difference, does it? At the end of the day, it's a cup tie, and you need to get through.
Yeah, I said on Friday, after I did the reaction pod after Friday, and I said it's not about being attractive. That was the 46 games that came before that. That's about being attractive football and entertaining the crowd. This is about being effective and winning a game of football, or 2 games of football. However, by any means necessary, and however you manage to achieve that. And Regis Lebris has set up again across 2 matches in a way that he thinks gives us the best chance not to entertain 46,000 people at the stadium alike, but to get us through to a Wembley final. And it might have taken a 123rd minute header off the back of Dan Neil's neck to do so, but he's achieved that, and full credit to him, regardless about the performance. The performance wasn't great, but I don't think we set up in a way to particularly perform well. We got the job done, and that's, to be honest, Chris, that's all I care about right now.
I think that's a really good place to finish it, to be honest, Bomber. I mean, because more to the point, it's nearly midnight, and we're absolutely drained after going through all of that. And of course, the worst bit about everything, the scramble for tickets starts here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm going to be completely shameless at this point and saying that I'm absolutely desperate for one. I haven't got one.
100%. I've got no shame at the moment. I mean, Johnny Robb, our Johnny, will be getting a text from me. He sorted my Wembley tickets last time. He'll be getting a text from me with some fluttery eyelids. But yeah, by hook or by crook, I would love to be there.
Well, I'm going to be shameless and say I will almost do anything for a ticket for Wembley. So
that's dangerous to put in the public domain.
Well, you see that almost that I put in there is very important. You see, I think everyone's different, but brilliant. Thanks for joining us so late.
Cheers, Chris.
I really appreciate it, mate. On an absolutely epic moment
Worth it.
at the stadium. Definitely worth it. I needed to talk through the whole thing with someone just to make sense of it all. Brilliant.
Make sure it was
Thanks,
real.
Paul. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to wake up tomorrow and just double check. I'm going to grab my phone straight away and check the score again. But thanks again, Bomber, and thanks again everyone for listening. You know what Gav's like. He'll be on and he'll be recording many pods, I guess, over the next few days, I think, and they'll be dropping all over the shop, I think, and we'll be having reaction after reaction to that. And of course, we'll then be needing to preview our trip to Wembley, and we'll be talking all about that as well. And if that's not enough, we've got loads for you to listen back to. We've got some pretty special interviews on there at the minute, one with Bill Bradshaw about the 1990 playoffs, so have a look back at that. We've got some of the on this week stuff. I mean, if you just want to bask in all of this stuff, you can listen back to all the build up to this game all over again if you want, and listen to the reaction that's going to be dropping very soon. But from us, it's bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.